Here is our CEO and co-founder of CELLINK, Erik Gatenholm.
Thank you so much, Professor Langer. It was a wonderful start to this great event, and I want to, of course, give everybody a very warm and exciting welcome to today's event. It's my absolute pleasure to present our strategic focus for the years to come, and I'd like to take a moment actually to start by thanking our excellent team, shareholders, investors, and most importantly, of course, our customers around the world for your loyalty to the CELLINK Group and the products that we offer. We're honored to have you with us and look forward to, of course, creating the future of medicine together with you. And I'd also, of course, like to take a little bit of time and give a special thanks to you, Isabel, our head of IR, for coordinating, arranging this entire event. It's a pleasure to, in the first time in our history, address all of our wonderful shareholders and investors and listeners around the world. We could not have done it without you. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Erik Gatenholm, co-founder and CEO at CELLINK Group. My background is in business management from Virginia Tech University with a focus on entrepreneurship. I also have an MBA from Gothenburg University. My passion in life is really commercialization of life sciences technologies that can disrupt industries and impact markets. And I believe the greatest impact I want to do in life is to leave this world a better place by providing technologies that can save lives. With that, I'll present some great things that we are working on both strategically and operationally, and to ensure that we can, of course, continue to deliver on our customers' needs and on this wonderful mission of ours as a company. You can go to the next slide. So to understand our future, let me first tell you a little bit about our past. As a company, our vision and mission is to create the future of medicine by providing technologies, products, and services for our customers to create, understand, and master biology. Our journey started on the 27th of January 2016, so just about 5 years ago, and we're very proud to briefly reflect over the accomplishments that we've achieved so far. Just over the last few years, we've transitioned essentially from being a single product or technology company to a bioconvergence company with about 700 team members, 2,000 plus users around the world, customers in more than 65 countries, and with more than 1,700 notable publications describing the great use and the great purpose of our technologies in the market. We're addressing today a market potential of about $150 to $200 billion, depending, of course, on the complementary technologies that can be provided in conjunction with our current portfolio. I'm very thankful for the great work our team has done, and of course, to get us to this point, but I also believe, and I'm very excited about the future that we're going for together. And I believe that the most important thing that has been the success factor for us has really been the great culture that we've been able to establish at the company, where ambition is truly celebrated, and CELLINK is a place where we can live our core values, which are namely passion, inspiration, and persistence. I believe that these will be the critical aspects that will take us to the next level. You can go to the next slide. To further understand our future, we really need to look at the major challenges that we are tackling on a daily basis. Global health expenditures, they continue to rise dramatically and expected to reach about $10 trillion over the next few years. The main reason behind this is really the increased life expectancy that has led to an aging population alongside increased frequency for chronic diseases such as cancer, heart disease, and diabetes. However, as we get older, we want to increase our quality of life in addition to that. We don't want to, of course, just live longer. We want to do more things with our lives as we age. And approximately 50% of the population in the US are considered chronically ill. And these patients account for about 85% of the total expenditure of healthcare services. You can go to the next slide. So if we look at perhaps the most pressing challenge today, and something that is of most relevant, I believe, and what everybody, of course, is talking about, the global pandemic that we're experiencing is really transforming the healthcare industry in the short term. It's a matter, in a matter of months, we've essentially gone from being very proactive in terms of how we target new diseases or study new diseases, do research in critical areas, to basically battling and fighting local pandemics or global pandemics and battling the effects of such pandemic. Of course, this going from a fully functional global economy to a lockdown, pandemic-ridden world has been quite unprecedented, and a lot of companies, researchers, many of our customers, for instance, they've had to make a transition in the short term to look at essentially how do we battle disease at perhaps an earlier stage. And I believe a major challenge for the global healthcare industry at this point is to get to a point where we can discover or understand and detect disease at a much earlier stage. Because if we understand the underlying drivers behind these pandemics, I believe that we'd be able to tackle them a lot faster and more efficiently. You can go to the next slide. In addition to disease detection and identification, I believe we're facing a major challenge when it comes to treatment development. And if we just look at the cost of developing new pharmaceutical treatments, it can cost more than $2 billion and take about 12 years to develop one new pharmaceutical drug. And the fact is 9 out of 10 of these drugs, they fail in the clinical stages of the development, meaning that these pharma companies, they spend billions of dollars to get these drugs through early stage toxicology testing, the discovery process, preclinical testing, and then in the final stage of the clinical trials, these compounds, they don't make it to the patient. And of course, the vastly increasing expenditures associated with developing these new drugs is hampering the outcomes and the treatments. In fact, the increase in costs associated with the development of new drugs has shown no significant growth in the number of new drugs being released. And that's a very, very concerning statement. You can go to the next slide. Another important challenge, obviously, and one that is very close to us and our founding principles, is that one life is lost essentially every single hour of the day from the lack of organ transplants. And in fact, with a 50% rejection rate, it makes the situation even more grave. We see that the shortage of supply in organs and tissues is going to be a major bottleneck for healthcare in the future. And as again, with this growing and with this aging population, we need to find ways to address these challenges. You can go to the next slide. We believe that the answer and the solution to these questions and these major challenges really lays in the combination of innovative modern technologies in the field of biology. And as Professor Langer was mentioning and talking about was really this bioconvergence concept, where a lot of new multidisciplinary industries and technologies, they converge for the sake of improving the outcomes of biological research and biological treatments. These technologies that we're talking about are on the cutting edge, providing new ways and methods of approaching health challenges because they let us gather more and better data. And with that data, we can tackle healthcare challenges faster and even become more personalized in these treatments and approaches. You can go to the next slide, please. Worth mentioning is, of course, the different technologies that come into play in this. And as we see here, we're looking at the lower start from the 20th century. We're coming in with a lot of data, especially on the big data side, a lot of computing, machine learning, AI, and a lot of ways that we work with the collection and deciphering of this data. And then, of course, looking into the future, what we believe is going to be an important aspect, and also as what Professor Langer mentioned, really the genetic therapies, looking at digitization of the biological data, the development and manufacturing of biologic drugs, and of course, in addition to that, looking into being more proactive through better diagnostics at earlier stages. And we see that all of these technologies advancements, they come together, and this is really what creates the bioconvergence and the beauty of it. I will speak about this shortly as well, but to cure cancer or to solve these major healthcare challenges, we really have to approach these from a very different perspective. And no longer are single technology or single product the solution to these type of challenges. You can go to the next slide, please. Worth mentioning is, of course, the latest BioRevolution report that came out just a few days ago by McKinsey. And the report is defining a $2 to $4 trillion market potential for the coming decades in terms of research in areas and application of biomolecules, biosystems, biomachine interface, and biocomputing. And I'm very proud and honored to say that CELLINK is today not only present within all of these areas with some sort of technology or products, but we're actually leading much of the work in specifically the biosystems area. I highly recommend the report for all the participants. It shines a light on the potential for the future medical applications, and it's a wonderful description of what the potential for bioconvergence is for the next coming decades. You can go to the next slide, please. So when looking at these areas more specifically, we see how CELLINK is actually working today with bioconvergence, and in which areas we are currently approaching our customers with products, and which areas we see ourselves growing in the future, and that we need to add to our wonderful portfolio. And when we look at these areas, for instance, drug discovery, 3D cell culturing, and regenerative medicine have been areas that we've been approaching for the last 5 years through our bioprinting business. But also through many of the acquisitions we've done, we've been able to open up more for biopharmaceuticals, even approach markets with CRISPR technologies or gene editing. And now, of course, with the addition of Scienion and Ginolis, we have been able to start approaching the diagnostics and the biological sensors market. I know we will cover these areas in more detail in the coming presentations from our colleague Holger and Jonas. You can go to the next slide. So with that being said, our journey was really started based on the fact that we wanted to conquer the bioprinting market by being the first complete package solution provider. So when we entered the market a few years ago, we noticed that, first of all, there were no cost-effective printers that could really penetrate the market and open up the field for researchers and scientists. And second of all, there were no universal bioinks or reproducible materials that could be used for the bioprinting process. So what we did is we opened up that market by providing cost-effective, complete package solutions that would answer to a lot of immediate needs from customers in the bioprinting field. But what we also learned to do through many journeys and travels to our customer sites is that we started to understand the concept of a bigger picture and really start to map out the other things that our customers are asking for. And it's very important to mention this because the mapping of these technologies and products that our customers were craving for, they were either too difficult for them to acquire from someone else, or they were too expensive, or they were simply not available. So with our brilliant engineers, researchers, and product developers, we managed to essentially start developing some of these solutions and products that have now become a larger part of our product portfolio and our offering. And what's worth mentioning, of course, here too is all of this knowledge that we've learned and the need from our customer has really come from just listening to them and understanding them and the work that they're doing. Initially with the bioprinters, which led to the need for liquid handling. The liquid handling led for a need in better reagents management, printing of cells, et cetera, and led to a bigger picture. You can go to the next slide, please. So after several essentially successful product developments along with strategic acquisition, and it's worth mentioning here, our agenda or strategy as a company is not to acquire companies per se, but our agenda and strategy is really to go after the technologies and areas that our customers are asking for. So if our customers are saying, or enough of our customers are saying, well, we want to see more products in 3D imaging, or we want to see more in live cell imaging, then it's our duty to serve these customers and serve their needs, and do that by providing the technologies that are needed, offer great customer care and support, and offer application support that understands the language that our customers are saying. And that has been a critical part of our growth success. But if we're looking at these business areas, we essentially have had the opportunity to structure ourselves according to these three main business areas. And these business areas that really have to do with our vision and mission as a company. So the first area is about disease and tissue modeling. This is bioprinting, where we work with novel technologies to create biological structures using cells, materials, and to use these materials or printed tissues for drug discovery purposes and future for therapies or for treatments. The second business area is biosciences, where we focus heavily on disease and tissue analysis and essentially offer products and technologies that can improve the way that we analyze different cell structures or different cells in use for different assays, or for understanding them in drug discovery processes, or even for omics, both genomics, proteomics, and specifically on the sample preparation side. And the last business area that was added quite recently is industrial solutions, where we work a lot with disease and tissue diagnostics. And in this business area, it's all about mastering biology, because what we want to do is we want to provide technologies that can help us and our customers understand disease at an earlier stage, help diagnose disease in patients at an earlier stage, and that will of course lead to the solution being brought to the market much faster. You can click on the next. So more specifically, we're looking essentially at 4 main areas that together create about $150+ billion market opportunity. And the market opportunity is realistically up more towards $200 billion, with complementary products that are being offered between these business areas. But let's start with these main 4 pillars that we offer. So the first market is really the tissue engineering market, that is expected to reach about $30 billion by 2027. It's a market growing at about 14%, and it's a market where we will continue to provide the latest products and technologies, and again, to provide these products and technologies for tissue creation and disease creation that can be used later then for different toxicology testing, and then hopefully in the future for therapies and treatments. The second area, the second fundamental pillar in the market that we're approaching, is really the cell line development market. And this is a $12 billion market in 2027, also growing at a double-digit rate. And also, of course, very interesting, since many of the new pharmaceutical treatments and compounds coming out or being researched are going to be biologics. This is where we see many of our products being approached and provided to. The third one is single cell omics market, which is expected to reach about $6.5 billion by 2027. Again, also a double-digit growing market, very exciting one, and we see ourselves continue to provide excellent technology, especially on the sample preparation side with our great I.DOT system, and even use some of our single cell sorting devices to approach this market. And lastly, of course, it's the massive diagnostics market of about $103 billion, and growing at a single-digit rate, but nevertheless is an important market to approach. And you've seen how much that market and these technologies and products have made a difference in the last just 12 months. You can go to the next slide, please. Something worth mentioning here, and something that is important to mention, is, of course, while we have these wonderful 3 business areas operating with great technologies that can provide revolutionary ways of doing research and develop new products and treatments, it's also worth mentioning what's going on between these areas. And things are typically not as silos. You can't see things as being very, very locked in. So what we do essentially is we've created a lot of workflows, and this is what we call the era of workflow, where we can truly build in ways of working with a wide range of technologies that can answer larger customer questions. So for instance, one of the bioconvergence workflows that we're working on is where a patient could be coming into a hospital. This patient would be either carrying a digital diagnostic sensors that could read off their personal data through sweat or blood, and this data could potentially show that something is a little bit off. This patient will come to the hospital. The hospital will take a sample, a blood sample, or do a lot of cell analysis. This cell analysis could potentially lead to a diagnosis of cancer in a horrible case, of course, but then being able to harvest these cancer cells from a patient's tumor, bring them into a laboratory, sort these cells using our single cell isolation system or sorting products, expand these cells using our CellSite X system, and see the growth and proliferation of these cells, then take these cancer cells, put them into a bioink, print those cancer tumors out. These are patient-specific cancer tumors. Run these tumors through a high-throughput screening method or a high-throughput screening workflow, and dispense either new compounds or very well-known compounds to work on these types of cancer cells. continue with live cell imaging analysis, and understand the efficacy of these drugs that have been dispensed on these cancer tumors. Already there, we're providing a very, very new type of workflow that enables us to study the efficacy of drugs on patient-specific cancer tumors. And then, of course, if these are well-known treatments, then we can move forward to provide a personalized treatment plan for the patient with the right dosage and with the right, of course, medicine. And if it's unknown treatments, well, then this could lead to new drug discovery. It could go through, of course, efficacy testing and then clinical trials, and then provide these treatment for the patient. You can go to the next slide, please. And something I think worth mentioning here is this work is ongoing, and it's something that our customers are doing on a daily basis. And I want to shine some light on research going on at this very well-known university hospital in Milan. It's the San Raffaele Hospital, where our great colleague or our great customer, Professor Cristina Cielzo, a leading researcher at San Raffaele, has been working with 3D bioprinting for a few years, and actually recently published this very impressive paper on how she's working with patient-specific chronic lymphocytic leukemia cells. And these are the most common leukemia cells or leukemia cancer in the Western world, so it's a very, very relevant study. But Professor Cielzo was essentially running this workflow, taking patient-specific cancer tumors, printing these cancer tumors out, and then running through different analysis on these cancer tumors to understand what drives them. And I think something very important to mention here is this will allow for a more reliable study of molecular and cellular interactions occurring in normal and neoplastic conditions, and could be exploited for clinical purposes to test individual responses to different drugs. And that's something that is in the works, and we're very proud to offer these types of technologies to our customers, and something that we see ongoing all around the world. And I highly recommend you reading that study, because it gives you great insight to what the bioconvergence technology is all about. You can go to the next slide, please. So looking at our strategic focus areas for 2021, something which is important for us to position ourselves as a business, and of course to continue to lead the way forward as a bioconvergence company, is to structure and focus on this very aggressive tech development R&D agenda with a tool of M&A, being able to acquire companies when needed for strategic purposes. We will, of course, continue to deliver on our financial targets, which are going to be, which is essentially a strong growth agenda, where it's all about providing more technologies and equipment and products, reagents to our customers so that they can do their job better. Continue to focus on our customers and being able to deliver the best products and services. And of course, in addition to that, we have two exciting areas that I will talk about in just a few minutes. You can go to the next slide, please. So if we're looking at the first three areas here, really, as I mentioned from the beginning, our agenda is not to acquire companies, but our agenda is to provide technologies that solve our customers' questions and needs. And we do that typically in-house development, very aggressive R&D. But if we can acquire something faster and enter a new market, and also at the same time, of course, provide the technology that our customers are asking for, that's the way that we'll go. And we've very successfully acquired a few companies in the last 18 to 24 months. And I think that's something that we'll continue to do moving forward, if that will help solve our customers' questions. We will, of course, also continue to grow with about 35% organically for the next year or two. And of course, do that by showing a positive EBITDA. And I know Gusten, our colleague here on group level, will tell you a little bit more about how this will be achieved. And lastly, of course, focus heavily on our customers by providing the greatest customer care in the industry, by provide products that are extremely user-friendly, and implement things in the centralized manner, where we can both save ourselves time and money, but also save a lot of pain for our customers. You can go to the next slide, please. What's worth mentioning is, of course, the customer segments and the wonderful users that we have around the world. And if we're looking at, for instance, the academic industry or the academic market, that used to be about 80–90% of our customer base just a few years ago. But over the last couple of years, we've worked heavier with building up a strong customer base with pharmaceutical and biotech customers around the world. And I would like to say we're very proud of seeing all of these great names out there, and we look forward to supporting them over the next coming years. You can go to the next slide, please. Something that is, of course, also going to be extremely important for us moving forward are the partnerships and collaborations that we have established with, for instance, companies like AstraZeneca or Lonza. These partnerships are essential because we're learning more about what our customers or what potential other pharma companies or cell expert companies need to be able to operate more efficiently or to be able to penetrate new markets and provide these patients with better solutions. So I would say probably the relationship and the collaboration with Astra has been a critical point for us over the last couple of years to understand how we can improve our product offering and of course improve products that help them develop better treatments to be used by patients. You can go to the next slide, please. Then, of course, the last 2 points in our strategic focus areas are really the people and sustainability. And I would say the people are the most important resource that we have at the company. We're very proud and honored to have all of these great colleagues working with us around the world. I say we have the greatest engineers, the greatest scientists, and of course the greatest salespeople and marketeers that can provide these products and technologies around the world. But something is important is, of course, also bringing new companies on board and making sure that we can integrate these wonderful people and ensure that they feel part of the great family. One of our great successes has always been the culture, and we continue to ensure that that will be the case for the coming years. Lastly, worth mentioning is, of course, the establishment of a sustainability agenda. And we're working now for 2021 and 2022 to establish this first sustainability agenda for the group, establish sustainability targets. The targets that you see below are the UN Sustainability Development Goals that we have selected that are relevant for our specific business. And we'll look forward, of course, to establish a report that we can report back to you in the coming months and quarters. So with that, I'd like to thank you so much for your time. I look forward to following the day, and I look forward to your continued confidence in me and the company to grow the greatest bioconvergence company in the world.